Have you been to Merchant, the iconic downtown cocktail bar and restaurant? Merchant helped define Madison's first settlement district with their soulful American cuisine, pioneering cocktail program, and warm hospitality. Whether you're grabbing brunch or settling in for a date night, it's a welcoming space where industry staff, locals, and visitors feel at home. Come experience Merchant in the heart of Madison's first settlement district. Learn more or make a reservation at merchantmadison.com. How much does reputation matter? When it comes to choosing an attorney, it matters a lot. That's why folks across Wisconsin have trusted the attorneys at Habish, Rodier for nearly 100 years. While they've built a national and statewide reputation for winning cases, here in Madison, they're your neighbors. Deeply rooted in the community, their attorneys are personally committed to helping clients recover with the kind of hometown service Madison knows and loves. For all types of personal injury cases, Habish is the name locals trust. Habish, Rodier, national reputation, hometown service. Visit habish.com or call 1-800-2-HABISH.
Today on CityCast Madison. The future of reproductive health care in Wisconsin is looking hazy. The state Supreme Court is expected to lay down a decision on Wisconsin's 19th century abortion ban this month. And the federal government is working on the, quote, big beautiful bill that could ultimately endanger the healthcare of tens of thousands of Wisconsinites. The folks at Planned Parenthood Wisconsin are worried and tired. To learn about how they're navigating these uncertain times, host Bianca Martin spoke with Tanya Atkinson, Planned Parenthood Wisconsin CEO, and Tenisha Garner, the manager of Planned Parenthood Wisconsin Madison South Health Center. It's Monday, June 23rd. I'm executive producer Haley Sperling, and here's what Madison's talking about.
Tanya, hello.
Hi, Bianca. Thank you so much for having us on.
Yes, and Tenisha, how are you?
I'm great. Thanks for having us. How are you?
I'm doing good. This is such an important conversation, so thank you for making the time to join us today. We've got a lot to talk about in terms of abortion and reproductive care access. Tanya, starting with you, the Wisconsin Supreme Court is expected to lay down a decision on the 1849 abortion ban any day now. They're at the end of their session. So what are y'all expecting there? Are you preparing for all outcomes?
Yeah, we're definitely preparing for all outcomes because obviously we don't know how they're going to rule. And in addition to the 1849 lawsuit, Planned Parenthood Wisconsin filed an original action to the Supreme Court calling the constitutional question whether Wisconsin's constitution does protect the right to bodily agency and autonomy. So there's two cases there that the Supreme Court has heard the arguments on the 1849 lawsuit, has taken the constitutional question lawsuit, but there's not been any arguments yet, and we're not sure when that's going to be scheduled.
So that one is just laying and waiting as well.
Right.
Yeah. All right. Well, I just had to check in on the status of that before we dive into the next challenge, right, that's before us. Tanya, so folks might not be aware of what's happening at the national level, something that could have major consequences for reproductive healthcare access. Congress is currently deciding on a budget bill dubbed One Big Beautiful Bill, right, Act, that has a provision in it that puts tens of thousands of Wisconsinites' healthcare at risk. What's happening there?
Yeah, there is a lot in that big insert adjective bill. And, there's a huge cut to Medicaid across the board. Here in Wisconsin, people might also know it as Badger Care. There's a huge cut across the board. And in particular, there is a provision, hidden away in the budget that what they like to say is defunding Planned Parenthood. And just to give a quick little background, Planned Parenthood of Wisconsin does not get a big check from the federal government and then they say, go do good. Planned Parenthood of Wisconsin is a healthcare provider. So when Tenisha and the team provide healthcare, like all other healthcare providers, we bill people's insurance. And, we can bill all kinds of insurance, including Medicaid. And 60% of Planned Parenthood Wisconsin's patients have Medicaid as their form of insurance. Medicaid can't be used for abortion. So this is essentially saying that people who have Medicaid as their form of insurance cannot come to Planned Parenthood of Wisconsin as a healthcare provider for STD testing and treatment, cancer screenings, and the list goes on. And on top of it, the Office of Management and Budget estimates that it's going to cost taxpayers $300 million more right out of the gate. So it's not taxpayer saving, and it's written in a way that only targets Planned Parenthoods across the country.
And where's that 300 million coming from? Like what are those costs?
So right out of the gate, essentially it's because Planned Parenthood Wisconsin is a specialty healthcare provider. So if a patient is lucky enough to get an appointment somewhere else, other healthcare providers, and I say this without any judgment, other healthcare providers simply have, a larger system. And so often, especially if people have to access care through the emergency room, the cost is simply much more to provide that care. And it also underscores the reality that Planned Parenthood Wisconsin is an entry point into the healthcare system. We partner, we work with each other. So there's also, on top of all of this, not only is it going to cost more, but it's unlikely that other healthcare providers are able to absorb the patients that Planned Parenthood Wisconsin is serving.
Mm-hmm. And Tenisha, you manage the Planned Parenthood Madison South Health Center. In addition to abortion, like as Tanya set up, you all provide a wide scope of basic health care. What kinds of other services are at risk here for both women and men?
We deliver the full spectrum sexual and reproductive health care. I mean, we have preventative care from annual health exams and breast and cervical cancer screenings, menopause consultations, a lot of those reproductive rights that people do know us for, like birth control options, and even some that extend beyond that serve our communities in rural areas, like receiving their birth control by mail. We do vasectomies and emergency contraceptive. We have HPV vaccines, STI screenings, HIV screenings, endometrial biopsies, and our gender affirming care. That's just some of it, but also a big part of what we do is also the education portion and being able to do that in spaces in our clinic and in spaces where we're meeting the community where they are.
Mm-hmm. And how many Madison area residents use your services? Do you know? And in terms of like the demographics too of those patients, who's going to be affected for folks who use Medicaid or Badger Care?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, so Planned Parenthood Wisconsin serves nearly 60,000 patients a year. And in 2024, Dane County alone provided care to 5,000 patients. At our South Clinic specifically, we served more than 3,000 patients, and 86% of those resided in Dane County. The remaining patients primarily traveled from some of those outlying counties that lack that access to sexual and reproductive health care. So far in 2025, Madison South has already seen 2,440 patients. We're on track to see more. That's a 20% increase from last year. And that doesn't even begin to bring into account the 800 plus patients we've seen on telehealth now that we're able to offer that service. Like Tanya said, we really are an entry point for so many people's healthcare journeys. And I can't honestly even tell you how many times I have patients come in here because they were referred to us or referred back to us because they did go to other clinics. And again, not an indictment on anyone else, but they just simply don't have the capacity to see them, or they're only taking one type of patient. So patients do end up back with us. Sometimes they even come in knowing that what they're asking for falls outside of what we offer. But because they trust us and they listen to us to guide them and point them in the right direction, they still show up at our clinic.
Yeah, I mean, the numbers are huge. Tenisha, you just laid it out. And Tanya, I want to talk about, obviously, there's so much at stake if this provision gets turned into law. We did just get a picture of all of the different types of services. One of the things that Planned Parenthood also offers is gender affirming care for adults, so people 18 years and up, things like hormone therapy. Could this bill impact that care?
There is a provision in the bill that does talk about gender affirming hormone therapy. And of course, there's an executive order as well. So yes, this is going to impact gender affirming hormone therapy. It's going to impact when we think about the individuals in Wisconsin who have Badger Care as their form of insurance. It's going to continue to further marginalize people who are already marginalized in our healthcare system. So people who are living in rural Wisconsin, I grew up in a very rural part of Wisconsin. It's very hard to get healthcare there. Not that it's easy anywhere, but it's especially hard in rural Wisconsin. Women of color, people who are struggling financially, so folks who are already having a hard time accessing healthcare, it's going to be even harder for folks to access healthcare. So, and of course the transgender community as well, as you mentioned. So this is further pushing more people out of our healthcare system, and it impacts the life and health of individuals. And it also matters. I can't tell you the number of times where somebody has stopped me and, to Tanisha's point about why people come to Planned Parenthood, the number of people that have stopped me and said, please, thank the team because they caught my cancer early, right? And if we think about that, there's the individual, And then we think about their families, their children, the people that love them. It impacts the health of our community and then the health of our entire state. So these attacks, these attempts to, remove access to care, to transfer wealth to others, it will have an indelible impact on the state of Wisconsin.
Mm-hmm. And you noted up top that Medicaid can't be used for abortion services, but this provision, if it gets signed into law, it would impact other people's ability to get services, and that Planned Parenthood centers would be threatened. I saw that an estimate of about 1/3 of Planned Parenthood centers nationally could close. We've seen from the data already what happens when abortion access goes away. People die. Reporting from ProPublica shows in states like Texas, pregnant people have died after doctors delayed providing health care to end pregnancies and miscarriages because it would have been considered an abortion and thereby illegal. We've seen women be forced to carry non-viable pregnancies to term, which is truly frightening. Is this the future Wisconsinites have to prepare for?
Yeah, I mean, I think what you said is there's a couple of things I'd love to touch on. So first of all, if Congress is successful in defunding Planned Parenthoods across the country, a national abortion ban is next. They're on the record, that's what they're going for, and this will simply embolden them in whatever way, shape, or form they can ban abortion, they will. And so everything that you laid out, yes, the entire country could be expecting that. We got to continue taking action. When it comes to the family planning and Medicaid, there is a lot of research out there. Texas, for example, Planned Parenthoods can't bill Medicaid in Texas. The public health outcomes are stark and they are fast. We have similar data here in Wisconsin when PPWI was defunded of state family planning dollars and had to close some health centers. Some of those communities immediately became hotspots for new STI infections. So the impact is immediate. And then again, there's the long-term impact of, not catching an STI early can have a huge impact on somebody's health. It can have an impact if, somebody's pregnant and the STI isn't treated. Congenital syphilis is a real thing, and it's on the rise in some communities in Wisconsin. So this is not about politics. It's about whether your neighbor can get cancer screenings, whether they can get access to birth control or STI testing. Planned Parenthood Wisconsin has been here for 90 years. And if Congress defunds us, thousands of the Wisconsinites Tenisha was talking about could lose the care that they count on.
This episode is sponsored by Babbel. Have you ever picked a vacation spot based on where you won't need a phrase book? With Babbel, the language barrier no longer has to hold you back. You can start speaking a new language with confidence thanks to Babbel's conversation-based techniques, which quickly teach you useful words and phrases about the things you actually talk about in the real world. Babbel has more than a dozen languages available for you to learn at your own pace, with material tailored to your individual proficiency level, interests, and time availability. I'm David Ploth, CEO of CityCast, and I've been learning Spanish with Babbel. What I really love about learning Spanish with Babbel is that it works with me where I am. The app and the website keep track of what I've learned. They help me review what I probably forgot from last time, and always is keeping me engaged with a new challenge based on actual conversations I might have in Spain or Mexico or Colombia, especially food conversations because I love food conversations. So get talking with Babbel. I want you to learn another language, so I'm teaming up with Babbel to give you 55% off subscriptions, but only for CityCast listeners at babbel.com/CityCast. Get up to 55% off at babbel.com/CityCast, spelled BABBEL.com/CityCast. Babbel.com/CityCast. Rules and restrictions may apply.
Test, check 1, 2. You know you need unique New York. You know you need unique New York. Does that sound all right? Ah, that's better. You can always tell something's missing when you get isolated results. Like AI that's only right for one of your systems. Get AI that can work across your data and applications. Learn more at IBM.com. The AI built for business. IBM.
My understanding is that Planned Parenthood offers the majority of access to abortion. I mean, where in the state can folks get abortion care?
There's 72 counties in Wisconsin, and 3 counties have access to abortion. Sheboygan has access to medication abortion, Milwaukee County, and Dane County. So those are, of the 72 counties, there's only 3 counties that have abortion providers, and there's a total of 3 different abortion providers in the state. So there's 3 in Milwaukee County, 2 independent in Planned Parenthood, and then Planned Parenthood in Sheboygan County and in Dane County.
Mm-hmm. Well, I just have to say, I didn't know about this issue in the big funding bill that it would impact reproductive care access. And I'm curious, Tenisha, with all this uncertainty over the past few years, right, with our courts going back and forth, and now this threat to Medicaid, have you seen any changes in demand for services, like any uptick, or are folks just kind of going about their lives the same as this battle is happening in almost another universe?
As far as a change like within clinic, since the change in the political landscape, we've definitely seen an uptake, especially people wanting long-acting birth control methods, things like that. With the changes to what and where people can find STI statistics and results, we've seen people growing in concern there. We've seen upticks in things like syphilis. When I first read your question, I kind of interpreted it as like a threat to Planned Parenthood of Wisconsin. And, I was going to say that specifically in Madison, I don't say we've had a recent uptick in threats outside of this looming concern of the bill, but we're fortunate to be in the heart of a city that wants us here and a community that broadly supports the reproductive health care and our presence. But I think it's important to recognize on the flip side of that comfort that the support doesn't always translate into action. Just because people agree with our mission doesn't mean they're actively advocating and speaking up or stepping in to protect that access for others. And in a time like this, when legislative threats are real and persistent, that passive support isn't always enough. We really just need people to move from a quiet agreement to visible and vocal solidarity with us.
Do you hear from patients concern about care going away? Is it on the front of mind of everyday folks that this might be going away?
Yeah, and it has been since, we've been moving into a different political landscape. Tanya and the team have always been very supportive of our work here in the health center and what messaging we're standing solid on, and reminding us that in this 90 years that we are really same goal, same mission. My favorite Planned Parenthood anchor is care no matter what. And we've found a way to continue that and to really embody that throughout this process, throughout these times, and have every intention on continuing to do so.
Of course, y'all are a healthcare provider here locally, and you take medical care of people. I saw online that you go beyond that and you offer other kinds of social care and community work. Can you talk about, Tenisha, a little bit, like what role does Planned Parenthood play in the Madison community?
Yeah, so the work in the community is definitely something that I'm passionate about, but here in my role at Planned Parenthood, I have the unique opportunity to mobilize that as a direct reflection of Planned Parenthood. And again, that anchor statement, care no matter what, and the promise that doesn't end when the patient leaves the exam room. It's something that we intentionally carry into our neighborhoods, into our partnerships, into how we show up for the people who need us most. I think when somebody trusts us with their most vulnerable and intimate healthcare needs in a society where their reproductive health is still stigmatized, the trust comes with that responsibility. We have to show up in those spaces. It means that we need to be present outside of the clinic walls. It means building those relationships, breaking down barriers, and supporting people's autonomy in every aspect of their life.
And what does that look like? Do you have any specifics, an example?
I've been working closely with public affairs and our community-facing teams to definitely build that presence here in Madison to keep going. We did a community baby shower recently. We keep resources in the clinic for people who are unhoused just to see how we can help them. And even just down to our resource list, when people have questions about where to turn, having those relationships and building those bridges, it's a benefit to our patients.
I think that there can be a lot of misconceptions about Planned Parenthood's work. Tanya, obviously you oversee the whole state. Are there any pieces of this picture that you feel like you wish people better understood, and what Planned Parenthood is facing and what, residents have to face with these constraints and pressures from the political realm?
Yeah, thank you for that question. It's Planned Parenthood sort of in an interesting conundrum of having incredible community support. If you look at the polls all over the place, right? Where, Planned Parenthood is in like 50 to 70%, depending on the poll, approval rating, which is incredibly high, because most people, 1 in 4 women have been to a Planned Parenthood at some point in her life, right? And of course, we continue to serve an ever increasing number of people across the gender spectrum. So there's a real personal connection to Planned Parenthood. And to Tanisha's point, it doesn't always translate into action because our patients are also busy people, right? And so I think that it is really important for people to understand the scope of services that are provided. And Tanisha's laid those out, so I'm not going to repeat that. I think it's important to understand about the scope of services because of what that means to a community. And again, in being the entry point into a healthcare system, and that we have a very large virtual healthcare center. And so again, as somebody who grew up in a really rural part of Wisconsin, when I looked at the map of where our patients lived for gender affirming hormone therapy, all over the state, in the tiniest of towns. And I think about people who might not have been able to have access to care otherwise, right? And I think it is really important that people know, A, that Planned Parenthood Wisconsin is open, because part of their strategy is confusion. There's a reason that crisis pregnancy centers, the dangerous crisis pregnancy centers giving misinformation, there's a very distinct reason that they set up shop across the street from Planned Parenthoods and use the same color and font and all of those things, right? That is intentional confusion. Not only is it giving dangerous information, it's intentional confusion. The media, that continues to, again, people are busy. How many of us don't read a headline and think we understand what's going on? So if the headline is Planned Parenthood's close, which Planned Parenthood? My Planned Parenthood? Where can I get abortion access? Where can I get family planning? So it's really important that people understand that Planned Parenthood Wisconsin is open, that there's a wide array of services that are provided, that our commitment, our vision, and it's built into our strategic plan is health equity. And health equity means a lot of different things, and that we are really focused on doing our best to bring the care to individuals. So whether that's having a neighborhood health center like the one Tenisha leads, or whether that's having virtual care that people can access directly from their phones. And on top of that, Planned Parenthood Wisconsin is able to send almost every method of birth control except for the long-acting methods like IUDs or implants, send it through the mail quarterly. So it's really important that people understand the services that are being provided and the consequences of those services going away.
Mm-hmm. And you brought up the crisis pregnancy centers. I don't know that everyone knows the stories behind this or that this is even a thing that they should be looking out for. It does sound like that's a pretty dangerous thing to be headed in one direction where you think you're going to get the care that you need and you don't.
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of information out there on crisis pregnancy centers. I think, what is important for folks to understand is to, if it's them or their friends and they, need to go see a reproductive health care provider, to just double check where they're headed and what the services are provided at the particular center, because the names are all over the map. So there's not just one crisis pregnancy center name, but to know that those crisis pregnancy centers are not there to provide healthcare. They are not healthcare centers. They are not, for the most part, staffed by healthcare providers. One of their jobs is to dissuade people from, getting abortion, among many other things. So I just think it's really important that people know that they're there to stay informed. And again, if it's you or yourself that need any kind of reproductive health care, double check that website. And if there's not a Planned Parenthood near you, make sure that there's a lot of great family planning providers across the state that we partner with. So just encourage everybody to check the website, make sure it's one of either Planned Parenthood or one of the great family planning partners that we have across the state, and so that people can get access to the care that they're really looking for.
Well, so obviously this budget bill is an active threat to the sort of centers and the services that you all provide. Tanya, before we let y'all go, I imagine what folks can do is contact their U.S. senators because the bill is before the Senate at this point if they are interested in protecting the services that they have access to currently, right?
Yeah.
In southern Wisconsin, as you discussed. That said, sometimes folks wonder if calling the representatives really makes an impact. What do you think about that? Especially if a representative has different opinions. Does calling or writing matter? Like, have you seen success with that in the past?
Yeah, it really does. Thank you for saying that. If anybody's listening right now and they care, hit pause, call Senator Johnson's office, call Senator Baldwin's office. It does matter. I used to work in the state legislature, and it absolutely matters. And we do see people shifting over time. And even if publicly they might not, be in a position to, stand up publicly, they need to hear from us. And I would encourage people to call both the Senate and the House, because first of all, they're counting on us to be tired, because there's so many things that are happening. There's so many threats to people that we care about, to issues that we care about. So that is also part of their strategies for us to get tired. And I get it, right? Like, hear my voice. This is not what I normally sound like. Yeah, people are tired. And if you can find that 5 minutes to send the message or to make the phone call to your representatives, U.S. senators, or whoever your congressperson is, they need to not be let off the hook. They can't stand on the House floor or the Senate floor and say, well, this isn't important because I haven't heard from my constituents. That's a lie. And so they need to continue to hear from us. So Senator Johnson is very worried about cutting even deeper. Okay, we need Medicaid in the state of Wisconsin. So double message, vote against the bill, get the Planned Parenthood provision out, because Wisconsinites need their Badger care. And that's what it boils down to. So it absolutely matters. That is the number one priority, is to pick up the phone, call Senator Johnson, Senator Baldwin, and every single congressperson that represent you. So even there are amazing champions like Senator Baldwin and Congressman Pocan and Congresswoman Moore. They can stand up on the floor and say, my phone has been ringing off the hook nonstop from Wisconsinites who say they need their Badger care, or their friends or their family or people they love. So they need us to have their back as their champions out there in D.C.
Well, Tanya and Tenisha, thank you so much for coming on the show and helping us understand some of the impacts of this bill and what it would look like on the ground. It means a lot, and appreciate your time, even if your voice is tired.
My voice is tired, but we're all geared up and ready to go.
Thank you. Yeah, we are going to do care no matter what. And thank you for having us and helping us make sure that people know.
Thank you so much, Bianca.
That was Tanya Atkinson, Planned Parenthood Wisconsin CEO, and Tenisha Garner, manager of the Planned Parenthood Madison South Health Center. That's all for today here on CityCast Madison. I'm executive producer Haley Sperling. If you enjoyed today's show, why not share this episode with someone who cares about bodily autonomy? We'll be back tomorrow morning with more stories from around the city. Until then, take good care.